Welcome back to Picture You. This week we're going to do something a little special and we're going to have our friend on as our very first guest. This is Sam Marder. She's the associate head coach at the University of Oregon. She was my catcher in the Pro League, and she was also a coach at Oklahoma when Nicole was a freshman. So, Sam, let's have you introduce yourself a little bit.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here. I'm in the presence of some pitching greatness. And so as a catcher, it's a very fun place to be. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. So I know we were starting to talk about this before we started recording, but figured we would start off by talking about how we met each other, like how we met, how you and Nicole met. Because I mean, I know you love telling the story about how you and I met the first day at Akron.
Yeah. So this is a flashback. I don't even know how many years ago now this is, but
13.
yeah.
Ugh.
Jeez. I
Yeah.
know. Old.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know. um Yeah, so my rookie season in the Pro League, and it's kind of a common. I think of like when I think about you and meeting you, I think about like two things. And one is my first time just ever meeting you. I remember we were in Akron. I had a broken ankle. I'm walking around in a boot, and I'm just like trying to figure out what I can do just to help at practice. And you come up, and you're coming up. Um, with full on like makeup, hair, full tattoo sleeve down the leg, and looked at me and was like, "Can you catch? You're the people don't know this, but you're the sweetest person ever." And so you're like, "Do you mind catching me?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." And I'm just trying not to like, I'm just trying to think like, how do I just not mess this up my first day? And you get in there. My first pitch throws like one of the nastiest drop balls I've ever seen, and I think almost takes out my broken leg, like in the boot. And that was my first time. And then then next year we became really good friends, and we decided to be roommates, right? And I don't know when I met the red suitcase first, if it was the first year or if it was the second year.
I
It
don't
was
remember
it was
either.
the first year you brought, and people don't know, you had this like little red suit, like business suitcase that
It's
you
a
don't tell
cupping set.
anybody.
For everybody else, it's a cupping set that I brought.
Whatever, you don't preface this at all. You just like walk up to the field with your glove and your little red suitcase, and people don't know you, people don't know what's in this thing. And I just remember multiple people come up to me, they're like, "What is in the red suitcase?" Because I was your roommate. I'm like, "I don't know, but I'm not asking, because whatever it is, I don't want to mess with it." So, and it happened to be your cupping system, which came in handy a lot. But
Yeah, dude.
that was my first experience with you. So, and it's been a long, great friendship ever since.
Yeah. We became
Um,
mom and dad on the team.
yes, mom, dad on the team. Yes, you being
It was,
dad.
it was good times.
Yes.
It was a great time.
Yes. And then I got really lucky. I got to go to Oklahoma um, for a little bit of time. It's one of the most like amazing experiences ever for me. And I got the opportunity to meet Nicole, and in my role there, I worked a lot with like data and analytics, and got to assist the coaches in that. And one of the coaches I got to assist was obviously Coach Rocha, and so I got a chance to know the pitchers a lot. And Nicole, as a freshman, was like so beyond her years as a freshman. So it's been such a fan watching you and watching everything you've done, and watching everything you're going to continue to do. So such an incredible like young star in our game. So just lucky. And look how lucky I am to be surrounded by you guys.
I feel like we're the lucky ones here.
Yeah, yeah,
You made us both better. Let's
yeah.
get real.
Listen, I don't know how much better you guys needed to do. I was just there to, as a good catcher, I was there to assist where I needed to assist for both of you. So
I mean, you say that, but I remember the 2 times I shook you off, I gave up home runs. So, like, I learned my lesson pretty quick.
yes,
To just do
well,
whatever you say.
that's because I grew up as a Bull Durham fan, and which is tell tell the hitter what was coming. Just kidding. Not really what happened.
I know, but I still learned my
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah.
Either way.
No. You were a fun, very, very fun pitcher to call for. Very, very easy pitcher to call for. So
Thanks.
yes, absolutely.
So I guess that's a good transition. So that's kind of what we're going to start with talking about today is calling pitches. So there's a lot of different mindsets behind it, and there's a lot of different pieces to it. So, like, what would you say are probably the top two most important things to keep in mind when it comes to pitch calling?
Yeah, I would say number one, I mean, honestly, it kind of goes a little bit hand in hand, but number one is just understanding your pitcher's strengths for sure. And really throwing to your pitcher's strengths. I think that whenever I would call pitches, especially like in the pro league and as a catcher, I feel like if you're somebody who has experience in calling pitches as a catcher, if you have a great relationship with your pitcher and you understand what their strengths are and you understand also like into my second point, kind of what the hitter's weaknesses are. I think that's also a second really important thing. But as a catcher, you can see so many things, right? You can see where they are in the box. You can see what their swing is like up close. And I think that probably a lot of pitching coaches out there would say that it's such a great advantage to have a catcher who kind of can pick up on things like that in the box and to help assist whoever's calling, whether it's their pitching coach, probably who's calling the game, but assist that pitch caller. So I just think understanding what your pitcher's strengths are for sure. What can they throw as a strike on any given count? Something I always want to know. Like what if it's 3-2 and I have to have a strike, right? And there's situations where you're facing certain hitters and you're not concerned necessarily whether it's going to be a strike or not because you're throwing them in a way where you're kind of maybe throwing them a little backwards or just are looking for swing and misses, right? And you're okay if it's a ball. But in other situations, for the most part, I just want to know if I have to have a strike, what are the pitches I can call, right? That I can 100%, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times I can throw over a strike. What are the pitchers that are getting swing and misses? If you're lucky enough to have a pitcher who has swing and miss stuff, like what are those pitches? I also think obviously like knowing what they feel most comfortable with, and that's kind of where that relationship, goes into play, which is huge. But I would say that would be the most important thing is understanding what your pitcher's strengths are and what they feel comfortable with. And then going into that, I would say if you're in a situation where at a certain level where you are scouting, what are the hitter's weaknesses?
For sure.
There's a whole rabbit hole to go down with that too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll touch on that later. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I mean it's
a whole other video.
I will say this, and I will say, even as someone who spends so much time developing offense, like it's tough to beat a pitcher's strength when that is really, really on. That's why I kind of start with that.
Yeah, I agree. And then you have the confidence factor on top of that. Like, I mean, I know pitchers, I work with pitchers who they only want to throw to hitters' weaknesses. It's like, well, why not throw your best stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a time and a place for all of that, right? And I think that you guys can talk more about this for sure. And Nicole, you just got done playing, but there's absolutely going to be time, I'm sure, when you're scouting and you're going to say, okay, like I understand there's a certain hitters out there that you have to understand their weaknesses. And maybe if you go head to head, maybe they can be successful at times, even with your best stuff. But I would think that most of the time when you're up there, it's really going with the pitcher's strength, is what I would think. What do you guys think? Nicole, what do you think after just playing?
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. I think the hitter film and like seeing what their weaknesses are is kind of like supplemental to what your strengths are. Because what we found a lot of the times too, when we would play a team, their like game plan against us is completely different. Like completely flipped. They fix their swings, I guess the week before. I don't know. Like sometimes it just is completely different. We're like, we've watched so much film on you and your swing looked nothing like that. So it's kind of just like taking hitters film with like almost like a grain of salt, but still pitching to your strengths and using their film and their weaknesses just in addition. But I think, like you said, like prioritizing the pitcher's strengths.
For sure.
Yeah, and like if you have a team that's well prepared, like I remember when we played you guys in 2022, we had one of our down ball pitchers starting, and everybody in the on deck circle is golfing. And then we brought out our up ball pitcher, and all of a sudden everybody's tomahawking in the on deck circle. So there isn't a single swing. I was so impressed with that. I tell everybody about that because everybody was so bought in, and they exaggerated it so much in the on deck circle that it was just second nature to them when they got in the box, and they knew exactly what their plan was and how they were going to attack that pitcher with a certain type of swing. So I totally agree. Like with really disciplined hitters, you can't necessarily take in what you see on film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think there's a time and a place for both of it shows up at the highest level. There's no doubt about it. Like, I think our pitchers get so prepared on both this. They do such a good job of getting prepared and do understand, okay, how are we going to attack this hitter specifically individually, right? Like, how are we going to attack this swing type or this swing plane or whatever that is. And I know, Nicole, I know you're prepared in the same exact way to how to attack each individual player out there. But at the end of the day, if that pitcher doesn't understand what type of pitcher they are and aren't pitching to their strengths along with that, I don't think they're going to be as successful.
Yeah. And I think we need to make sure that coaches understand that also, or the pitch callers understand that, because, some coaches they want to throw rise balls all the time because it's, it's a really flashy pitch and you get a lot of strikeouts with it, but not everybody has a good rise ball.
Yeah.
So you can't treat it all the same.
It's interesting because I think that now our game is even going into a lot of matchups. I think that you've seen that in baseball, and where let's just say you have like a really, really good down ball pitcher, and maybe you have a team that traditionally hits a lot of fly balls, right? Well, maybe that's not the best matchup for that pitcher necessarily, or certain hitters and certain pitchers. So I do think that you do see like matchups that are out there now that your pitchers are being put into. Really good pitching coaches can put pitchers into really great situations now, which I think is really fun to see. Like when you're seeing pitching coaches like truly match up pitchers to hitters, and opposite way too, like from a pinch hitting standpoint or from a lineup standpoint. I think you see that a lot now too, is people stacking their lineups into what they anticipate they're going to see based off the kind of hitter they are and pitcher they are. So to your point, I even think about it more in like what kind of a pitcher you are, as even more than just like what kind of pitches do you have.
Yeah. That's actually a great segue. I was going to talk about this later, but one of the things I like to work with my pitchers on, Nicole, you and I have talked about this, is how can you make yourself into a different type of pitcher within a game? Because like, remember, maybe you don't remember, it was so long ago, but like I liked to be really heavy on up ball pitches early in the game, and then I would transition to down ball later in the game. One, I knew my rise was better early, but also later in the game, the more I can keep the ball down, the more the ball stays in the park. I mean, so I wanted to create or be a different type of pitcher at different points in the game. And obviously, you roll with the punches a little bit and you see what the team's doing that day and how you're feeling that day. But I think it's really important for pitchers to be able to redefine who they are mid-game.
I think adding to that too, like if a team or a hitter takes away like your best pitch or takes away, let's say your rise ball's working and then they start hitting it, like let's just say that's your best pitch. Like you have to be able to rely on your second, third, fourth, whatever best pitches and still be able to get the hitters out. So like we even would practice that in practice, where a full bullpen, we wouldn't throw a certain pitch, or even in live, like you'd have to find a way to get them out without throwing that. So I think that that's important, especially when you're in a game, because it's likely that, they might start sitting a certain pitch. So being able to switch that up in the middle of the game, I think is super important.
Yeah. Or what happens if your best pitch isn't on that day?
Yeah.
I think that's what some of the best in our game do, is they have the ability to show completely different plans and different ways of attacking you from game to game. I think that as you're seeing series grow, like 3-game series within teams grow, you're seeing that more and more, and just getting to learn from. I got really spoiled. I got to learn from, I got to sit there and learn a little bit from, from Coach Rocha, a lot from Coach Rocha, and a lot, obviously, from Coach Lombardi, and just seeing how they go about that, right? Not only developing their pitcher, but also from a strategy standpoint of how are we going to beat them on Friday? How are we going to beat them on Saturday? And how are we going to beat them on Sunday in all different ways? So I totally agree.
Yeah. And that, I mean, for me as a player, that's what made it fun for me, because it became chess. It wasn't just like, okay, I'm going to go throw and I'm just going to do what they tell me. Like, no, I have a plan. Like, I'm going to put you where I want you. And then you're going to think you're going to get this, but I'm going to pivot and go this way. Like, that's where it got really, really fun for me.
Yeah.
Like that mental trick of just, yeah.
But that's what made you really special as a pitcher, is that you had that ownership piece of that. And you understood not only, I think, what made you really successful as a pitcher, like what your strengths were, but you understood the strategy part to go along with it. And so you weren't just kind of like throwing out there, like you really had purpose behind every pitch that you were throwing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that was just what I did. I don't know how normal or abnormal that was. That was the fun part.
Right. I thought it was really cool, at least from my
I mean, we talked about it a lot.
Yeah. That's part of it. It's what separates pitchers, I think, besides just their stuff, is like kind of how they go about their business, and do they have like that purpose behind what they're throwing.
Totally. And you can pick those pitchers out pretty easily too, I think. Yeah. Like when you're watching them throw, you can tell.
Yeah, for sure.
So we had a question on Instagram. Someone wanted us to talk about pitch calling for younger pitchers who only have maybe 2 or 3 pitches, and what you would prioritize in that type of situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and you guys can correct me if you disagree, but I really think it's so important to master pitches before, to have a few that you master as opposed to having a lot that are just okay.
Absolutely.
It's amazing what a pitcher can do just from hitting location well. And at a young age, it's hard to have stuff that truly moves, through this. And you guys can talk about that obviously a lot, working with young pitchers. But I think at a young age, being able to have just the command aspect to be able to hit location the way where you want to be able to hit it. Obviously being able just to change speed is really a great tool to have at a young age. I don't think you need a ton of pitches at a young age. I think that it's just about, can you command where the ball is going to go? Because we all know there's just certain spots in the zone that are just hard to hit, no matter what the movement's like. They're tough. You have to have really efficient swings to be able to hit them. And I think at a young age, this is what people forget. This is what I think that pitchers and hitters both forget, is like the other side is human, right? Sometimes as hitters, we're like, the pitcher's automatic. It's a machine out there. It's going to hit this, hit this, hit this. I'm like, guys, like, this is a human being over there. They are going to miss. Okay. At some point, probably. Right. And as pitchers, you're like, oh my gosh, if I throw it right here, they're going to just absolutely tee off. And you're like, no, they're not. Like, a lot of times, like, they will miss too. And so I think sometimes you like, it's like, which side can master that mental piece of it. But I think at a young age, if they can learn just how to command what they have, I think it'll go much farther way than having to have all these different kind of pitches.
Yeah. And I don't think you need to complicate it any more than that. Like, yeah. You don't, great. You have a fastball and a changeup. You don't need anything else. Look at Jolene Henderson. Look at Alana Vaughter. Yeah. Drop change. Both All-Americans. Jolene's a Hall of Famer. Vaughter's probably going to be a Hall of Famer at Stanford. They are so effective at what they do with just those 2 tools.
Hey, they're pretty tough. I just want to say that. They're pretty
tough. No kidding. Like seriously, you watch film and you're like, why can't anybody hit these 2? But they were just so good.
Yeah. Well, they
And
definitely have mastered pitches. Like Vaughter has
totally.
mastered, and this is the thing that people, I got a chance to really get to like, we got played against her, right? And it's like just pinpoint accuracy.
Mhm.
That was really tough. Besides the ball, her ball like really was tough, like a good movement. Like, but
Yeah.
you're as you said, like she was really good at mastering what she had and like incredible at it.
Yep.
And Jolene as well. Like
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah. So it's not about having a bunch of tools. It's mastering a couple. And, even at the highest levels, like those are two examples, they had mastered two pitches. But I'd say in general, at that level, you see pitchers that have mastered two pitches and have an off speed.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't really see a lot of pitchers who throw everything.
Yeah.
They all have their tendencies towards two or maybe three pitches.
Well, and also it's like I think that there's a misconception of when you say everything, it's like you have to have maybe 5 pitches. And honestly, I really feel like if you have something that moves up and down and change up, if you look at the best pitchers in our game, they have the ability to have true up, true like they have a vertical separation component and a change up.
Yep.
And sometimes their vertical separation component is that change up, but it's like up down change. If you look at the best in our game or just really elite velocity. I mean, if you look at Nicole, right? Like I know so much more goes into her game than just being like up down change, but it's really tough when you can do this and have an elite changeup.
Yeah.
And I know you have more pitchers than that, Nicole, but like I'm just saying from a prep standpoint, that's really tough.
I mean, she had one of the best changeups in the game.
Nasty.
It was so nasty. It would just bite down.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just disgusting. I loved it.
Yeah. And that's another thing to think about too, is when you're talking about what pitches to master, right? Like having a really good changeup is really tough. Like, and I don't know how much development goes into that pitch. I don't know from a young age, but
A lot.
yeah, like
A lot.
that's something I hope that young people are really working on. Like everyone wants to throw like the rise ball, drop ball, all this stuff. But it's like, are you spending that much time developing that off speed pitch, that change up, like that can move? That's a nasty pitch.
Yep. But you can be really effective with that one. Like my changeup sucked. It was bad.
It was not.
It was bad. I have
Yeah.
no problem saying that. It was always my worst pitch. But my drop was off speed.
Also, and I know we're going to talk about this, but like you also had a really good downward moving pitch and a really good away pitch to righties. And so it still gave that change of speed because of what a secondary really good pitch you had was. So you still were able to, have that change of speed. It just wasn't in a true change up. It was in like a drop kind of curveball.
Yeah.
Action.
So, I mean, now we'll just kind of transition into effective velocity, I guess. I mean, Nicole, this is something that you've worked a lot on. Why don't you explain what the effective velocity is?
Yeah, so essentially it's just in, plain simple terms. If a ball's thrown up and into a hitter, it appears to be coming faster. So it's not actually being thrown harder. It just like if you're throwing 60 down the middle and you throw a rise ball up and in tight, it's going to feel like 65 to a hitter. So the same thing, if you go low and away, that's going to slow down the pitch in the hitter's eyes. And maybe it reads as like 55 miles an hour. So really your 60-mile-an-hour pitch is now 55 miles an hour if it's low and out. So you're able to create separation, with speeds. If you wanted to go up and in and it feels like 65 and then change up low and out, now that feels like 50, 45 miles an hour. And now you have 15 to 20. Oh, wait, math. What numbers did I just say? 65 and I'm going to cut this out, but 65.
Oh, no, we're leaving it in.
50, 15 to 20.
Good
That's
job.
what I said. Okay.
Good job.
Not going to doubt myself next time.
College education right there.
Yeah. 15 to 20 mile an hour difference with that spread. So that's essentially what that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like low and in and up and out, that's like the true speed. Like there's no change in perceived speed.
Yeah, so, and this comes in handy. So back to the younger pitchers, calling pitches for younger pitchers who maybe don't have a changeup mastered. You can use location to attack timing simply by moving in and out, up and down, which can make pitch calling a little bit easier, give you a few more tools to be able to attack hitters. Yeah, so I mean, and that's kind of how Sam called pitches for me, like she was just talking about. I'd have kind of an off-speed down pitch, low and away, and then I'd go back in with my rise. And it's not like I threw super hard, but that allowed me to really attack hitters' timing without a changeup.
Yeah, and you were really good at, like I said, like commanding that. And I think that when honestly, coaching Barty, this was a long time ago. I saw her speak and she talked about effective velocity, and it was the first time I ever like put into words and explained to me what I was doing pitch calling without me even realizing what I was doing. But it's really an incredible like way to think about it and a tool to use when you're pitch calling. I think it teaches people really how they can effectively call. But for you, yeah, I mean, just being able to hit different quadrants of the zone, as simple as low out, up and in, changed speed enough because you had movement on your ball and bite on your ball, right? Like, and you could really be accurate. And I think that again, you're talking about like what kind of pitcher are you, and really buying into that. Like for you, it was important that you hit your location well, because like you said, you didn't have all these different things to pull out to throw, but you were incredibly accurate. You had some really good bite on few pitches, incredibly competitive. And I just don't think you ever gave in either to hitters, and great combination for success.
It worked.
Yeah. But going back to the young pitchers out there, like I think just starting with being able to command what you're doing could get hitters out.
Yeah. And whether that's fastball changeup or maybe, fastball rise, right? An upspin pitch is going to be off speed. So you can use that to your advantage that way. So a rise or a curve thrown low and away, that can be your off speed if you don't have it that day.
Yeah.
So there's so many different ways you can combine the tools that you have. There's not like one set way to do it. So the way I like to explain it to my pitchers is you have, like little pie. And so you have location, movement, and change of speed. And every pitch you want to have, your goal is to have 2 of those 3 pieces. And if you can do that, you can figure out how to use those to your advantage, and you're going to be successful most of the time.
Yeah.
Then obviously if you have all 3, it's just easy.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then on days where you only have one, you figure it out and you find a way to win. Because we're going to have those days.
Right. And that's where that mental part comes in, which I'm sure is a completely different podcast. So.
It's going to be many
of
that.
For sure.
Yeah. The last thing, and we haven't touched on this yet, is like I always refer to them as the different zones. So I was taught there is a hitter zone, which is the actual defined strike zone in the book. There's the umpire zone, which in theory should be a ball width around the zone. And then the pitcher zone is everything outside of the hitter zone. So, a hitter's pitch is a really good pitch to hit. A pitcher's pitch is a really bad pitch to hit. How do you, are there different ways that you refer to these zones? How do you keep these in mind? How do you relay to your pitchers and your catchers which zone you want them to throw to when you're calling pitches?
Yeah, it cracks me up that the hitter zone is like the strike zone. It's like, of course, the hitter zone is just like the like what the strike zone is. It's right. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's why they made it. Because if there was no strike zone, if there was no defined strike zone, I would throw the ball behind me. Like, I would throw it behind the batter. There's no way I would throw it anywhere near him. So it forces pitchers to throw to the batter.
This is like where I really contradict myself, because it's one of my pet peeves when someone's like, what's the zone today? I'm like, the zone is defined. The zone is, this is the strike zone. Like I'm like, the zone is this. So I don't know if the umpire is like on it or not. This is the zone. this is what I know is the zone. So it's cracked up. People are like, what's the zone like to them? Like it's in the rule book. I'll show you what the zone.
Yeah.
But
The next
it's
question is, what is the umpire calling?
right.
That's the correct question.
Where's the umpire calling today? And that's really important to know. Like, and I think that I'm just gonna speak of it from a catching perspective from this. Like, that is a great tool to be able to know is, and when it comes into pitch calling, you know, when I was calling pitches and relaying that, I would basically just be relaying in my mind, like, here's where we can expand today. Because there's always somewhere you can expand and somewhere that probably the umpire is tight in. And I think just being able to communicate that. And I think it's an incredible advantage when pitchers are taking advantage, like when pitchers recognize that and throw to that. And this is something where it's in that mental game. And we talk about this a lot, you know, from a hitting side is like, we have to accept where the umpire is calling. Right. And it's really hard. I think it's something like we work on a lot is just understanding the strike zone and from a visual and a cognitive understanding, like something Oklahoma does incredibly well, right? Is like understanding the strike zone. And being able to pinpoint like where pitches are. But sometimes hitters get way too caught up in like, well, that's not a strike. And it's like, well, it is today. So like accepting that. And it's like, what team can accept that first of like where the zone is. And that's the frustrating part is to me ever is if like an umpire is not consistent, you know, because then that's a struggle in that way. But
Guessing game for everybody.
right. So I think that's just the hard part is figuring out like, okay, can you identify the zone, accept it? It's like you have to have like a personal like huddle up. It's like we're gonna accept this right now. Okay. Like I'm gonna accept it, you're gonna accept it, we're all gonna accept it. But understanding where it is and buying into that. And I think from a catching standpoint, your catchers can really communicate it. They know it more than anyone. Like they are right there behind the plate. They should be able to say like, it's this much, it's this much, it's this much, and communicating with the umpire about things. So I think from a catching perspective, if you can communicate where is the umpire expanding, where's the umpire tight, what's true to zone. If you can get that within the first inning and it's in the second inning, it's consistent, I think that team has the advantage. That's something that teams absolutely can communicate and should communicate on both ends of that.
Oh yeah.
So I think if you can get that, then you have an advantage.
Totally. So let's say you're calling pitches now.
Yeah.
As a coach, how would you relay where you want your pitcher to throw? Like if you want them to throw on the corner, if you want them to throw a little bit off, you know, and not just off, like let's say this guy is kind of tight on this umpire is kind of tight on the corners, but he's giving you down. He's giving you 4 inches down. How do you communicate to your pitchers like, hey, I want this one at the bottom of his zone, not at the bottom of the zone?
Yeah, that's just something that, I mean, we're so lucky that Coach Lombardi is the person calling, you know, is our pitching coach, and she does a great job of like, even on our calling system, like being able to communicate that. So it's different now because you have calling systems, right, where you can say, and different pitching coaches have different systems for that, whether it's a zone or a word or a color or something like that of where they want to hit that, because it's definitely communicated if you want it a little off the zone, a lot out of the zone, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's how it would be communicated as a coach, and that's how coaches could communicate that, is just writing it in a sign. I mean, if you're giving hand signals and things like that, you can have zones that you call it in, or you can give a signal to say like where you want it, whether it's, I would communicate it probably of like a ball off, 2 balls off, 3 balls off, like certain things like that for a pitcher to have. As a catcher, you know, there would be things that I could call that I'd be like I would give a sign like this, or like a 1 or 2, and that means like do it all.
Or press your glove on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Or like give me a little bit in that way that you can communicate that with a pitcher. Or just from a setup standpoint, you can kind of see that. But I think if you're calling a game and if you're definitely like at a youth level, and your pitcher, going back to that command part, has that command piece, I think you can definitely signal that in.
Yeah, I think so too. You just got to figure out what way works best for both you and the pitcher.
Yeah, exactly.
Nicole, how would you guys do it? Did you have it on you use the watch? I forget what that thing's called.
Pitchcom.
Yeah. You guys kind of had the same type of thing. You had a little system to talk about like how you want or where they want the location to be.
Yeah, like we had different colors, farther out, farther in, lower, higher, like, and then if there is, I mean, our catchers are good with like, the signals or just something to be like, look, like bringing attention to where the hitter's feet are, or like, keep it just like little movements that we are able to pick up on and be like, okay, it just brings our attention to it if we hadn't already noticed it. But as for like the actual pitch calling, we had like a color system on like where we wanted to put the ball.
God, it's so different now from when I played. I love it.
Yeah.
We had nothing. We didn't even have the cards when I played.
I know. The hand signals, face signals, all
Yep.
that kind of stuff. For
That
sure.
was it. That's all we had. Had to figure it
Gosh.
out.
I swear, I could like from my pitching coach had hand signals and face signals, and so I just like I have all this information in my brain still that I just have nothing to do with. I don't even know what to do with it anymore.
It's just taking up space.
It's just taking up space in my brain.
Anything else you think is important to cover as far as like pitch calling strategy?
Yeah, I think like the only other thing I'm going to say too is to, that I talked about for some reason with hitting, I'm going to hitting to bring it back to pitching, but if you were to ask a hitter, what's like the worst case scenario right now? Like what's the worst outcome, right? A lot of hitters might say like, oh, I don't want to strike out. And it's interesting because to me, you can have a great at bat and still strike out at the very end. And you have the ability to see a lot of pitches depending on what's, if it's early in the game, like seeing a lot of what the pitcher is pitching. And the hitter, like there's nothing more valuable to a hitter than like seeing multiple pitches off of a pitcher and seeing the different stuff that they have. And I think that sometimes like the strikeout like really is like the best thing and the worst thing. And for a pitcher, especially like it depends on what kind of pitcher you are, what kind of stuff that you have. But I got to tell you that I think some of the most frustrating at bats are like first pitch, like weak hit, right? And to me, I'm like, okay, not only did we get out, right, or we didn't have a quality at bat, but like the pitcher threw me one thing. And so now I go to my second at bat. And sometimes you have hitters going in their third, fourth at bat, and they've seen like 2 or 3 pitches. And a pitcher now is in a position like really has leverage late in the game. I think it's all about late in the game, like, do you have the ability to still beat that team or not? And that's when you kind of start to see pitchers come out. So I would even just start to say, like, how can you continue to celebrate for pitchers, even if they're not getting swing and misses? Are they getting people out with like few pitches, right? Like,
yeah, the rule I set is 4 or less.
Yeah.
4 or less pitches per at bat. That's your goal every single at bat.
Right. Like having an inning where you're getting out of an inning under, 9 pitchers. It's like, wow, great inning. Right. Or just things like that. I hope to continue to be celebrated from a pitch calling standpoint. The point is to get the hitter out, right? Like, or to get weak contact or whatever. And so strikeouts are amazing. I love having pitchers, right, who can do that.
Oh, yeah.
and all that. But I would also hope that, especially as you have these questions of like, how can I pitch call? I don't have that many pitches and all these things, like getting someone out in 1 or 2 pitches is a tremendous feat.
Absolutely.
And I hope we celebrate as much.
Yeah. And like this time of year, because everybody's playing and my pitchers come to me and like, well, I'm just, I'm not striking anybody out. I'm walking people. I'm like, okay, how many pitches does it take to walk someone? 4. All right. How many pitches does it take to get somebody out? 3. No, it doesn't take 3 pitches to get someone. And then you just see the wheels turning and they're so confused.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't compute for them that, hey, I can get a 1 pitch out.
Yeah.
Like that's the best out. A perfect inning is 3 pitches. A perfect game is 21 pitches.
Yeah. Yes. Like,
right.
Yeah. And, that's something that I look at all the time when I'm recruiting. I'm like, okay, maybe she had 2 strikeouts, but she had like 15 ground outs,
Yeah,
and like weak ground outs. Like that is, I want that pitcher on my team who can get
absolutely.
constant weak ground outs. Right. And, so I just think, again, it's okay if you don't have that swing and miss stuff, like as you're kind of developing and coming through. But do you have, like, what do you have to create weak contact, right? And I just think that's something that maybe not a lot of pitchers hear a lot when they're coming up through the ranks.
I agree.
Mhm.
Strikeouts are super flashy and then everything else gets kind of forgotten about. But,
Yeah.
like those ground ball pitchers, that's where you get the outs. That's where you build momentum. Like strikeouts are cool, but they don't really build momentum. Double plays, those build momentum. You know?
Yeah, I like it all. I
So
mean, Nicole did it all, so
that's true.
but she did everything.
We should all just bow at
Made you
Nicole's
feel
feet.
really good about yourself.
Oh my
So
God. Like disconnecting from the
yeah. Yeah, but no, I mean, I just think, like, when I think about calling pitches for games for you, for like, if we got somebody, if like we got a first pitch weak ground out, I'm like, great, boom, next. Like they saw one of your pitches, right? Or like a jam shot, like we
Mhm.
of course got strikeouts, and it's great, and it's part
Yeah.
of the game 100%. But you're in the 6th inning and you've thrown sub 60 pitches, like,
Dude,
all
that's a
right, let's
great
go. Like
game.
you can go full game.
Yep.
So I just think that's something too, just to be celebrated.
Absolutely. All right, Nicole, anything else we should cover before we hop off?
I don't think so. I think I wanted to emphasize what the question said about, like, you don't need to have all these different pitches, because it's hard even when you're older to master 5 pitches. Like that's still hard. Like you still have a rank order of like the, 1, 2, 3, these are my best ones. 4 and 5, like, they're okay. Like maybe they're like a show pitch. Like, so it's hard to master that many pitches. So really focusing, especially at the younger age, on the location and getting your fastball changeup down is good.
Yeah.
Master a couple pitches. That's it. Whatever they end up being.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam.
It's hard to prepare for.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know I got to let you go, Sam, but just huge thank you for coming on, being the first guest, setting the tone.
Mm-hmm.
Hope we did it.
We'll bring you back on again.
Yes, part 2.
Yeah.
I would love that. I would
Cover
love
other
that. We can
stuff.
unpack the little red suitcase if we still have it. And show people.
I don't. My dog ate it.
Like your story.
Well, you haven't. No, you met Oski.
Yeah.
Yeah, he ate it.
Yes, I've met all of your prize-winning dogs.
Yeah. Yeah, he eats a lot of things.
I know.
But
I
maybe
mean,
I'll get a new red suitcase for either when you come visit or I come visit you.
You need to bring it back. You need to bring it back.
I'll get one just for you. With complete with Chinese writing.
That would be great. That'd be great.
Got it. You got it.
Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck recruiting.
Thank you.
Have fun in SoCal. And yeah,
No,
we'll be
appreciate it.
chatting with you soon.
All right, we'll talk soon. Bye, guys. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
See you, Sam.